Hello and welcome to coverage of the World Magic Cup. We're in the semifinals here. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas and Zach Hill. We're going to be seeing Stanislav Sivka, World Championship competitor, on the right-hand side in a control mirror. He's playing blue-black. Against Ervin Husso from Hungary on the left-hand side. Czech Republic versus Hungary here, competing for a chance in the finals. Both players are going to be at 20 life here for quite a while, most likely, as it's just going to be land drops and some acceleration type spells. Luis, we see that there's a Azorius Charm on the stack, and there's also a response.
Yeah, I mean, both players are just kind of setting up here. Azorius Charm, one of the powerful things it does is that it's flexible, it's good against creatures, and it just cycles. But Forbidden Alchemy is a little better in that role, just having the flashback and digging for 4 cards, as well as dumping cards like Think Twice in your graveyard.
Now, Zach, you noted earlier that Sivka's deck, one of its main win conditions is Nephalia Drown Yard. How's that going to play out in this match?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, just anytime you have 4 open mana, you can start using your Drown Yard. Now, Hosu has some lands that matter. He's got 2 copies of Cavern of Souls really good in this matchup, as well as a Moorland Haunt. The Moorland Haunt, obviously, always going to be live if your opponent is Drown Yarding you.
Okay.
So, but I do think Drown Yard's key to this matchup. Also, just sequencing your cards well. Like, you saw it play Forbidden Alchemy in response to Azorius Charm, so it doesn't get syncopated. Alchemy, a pretty powerful card draw engine to go with those Think Twices and opportunities. Not quite as powerful as Sphinx's Revelation, but unlike Revelation, you don't have to set up a big fight over it, which could be advantageous in this matchup.
Right, now Sivka's just got lands on his side of the battlefield, and same with Husso. They're basically just going to be hitting land drops in the early stages. But whoa, a big play here early from Ervin Husso. Luis,
looks like
Thundermaw Hellkite is going to add some pressure to the board pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it looks like Stanislav still has a pretty big grip of removal spells. He started off by using Tribute to Hunger in order to get rid of the Angel while there's no Augur Bolus in play, but he still has the Warp Physique to deal with the Hellkite.
Yeah, Warp Physique for 6 or 7. You know, he's going to have a lot of cards in hand in the early stages. We mentioned this earlier, Luis. Unfortunately for Ervin, even though he has really powerful spells with, Thundermaw Hellkite, unfortunately Stanislav Sivka is going to have answers to virtually all of them that are in the form of a creature, as his deck really is tuned to kill creatures.
Yeah, between Doomblades, Warp Physiques, and Tribute to Hungers, he's got a lot of answers, and that doesn't even count the Tragic Slips, which he can set up depending on, what number he gets the Ratchet Bomb to go maybe kill an Augur Bolus, then turn on Tragic Slip.
Okay, so where does that leave Ervin as far as win conditions go? We know that on Stanislav's side, he's going to be looking to try to set up a Drown Yard to mill his opponent out. How is Ervin going to win this game?
And the tough part is that because Stanislav can kill the 4 Angels and the 2 Hellkites fairly easily, he can actually just let Sphinx's Revelation resolve to some degree. It's not as big of a threat as it would be in another matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting because normally in a control mirror, Sphinx's Revelation is kind of one of the most, if not the most important card, Zach. It looks like Stanislav can kind of ignore it here.
Well, he can ignore it if he draws lands at some point.
Yeah.
Right now, he's way behind on mana, and that's going to, I mean, he does have a grip for removal spells. He was able to syncopate that Sphinx's Revelation. I'm kind of surprised the Revelation walked into the syncopate in the first place, although it looks like he has another one. But Sivka does need to get something going on right here.
Well, I think what actually ended up happening is Stanislav had to discard syncopate to cards in hand.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, so it's not even that good for him. And it's unfortunate for the Czech team that this game 1 is the game that it really is Stanislav's to lose. Since game 1 is where Ervin does not have Aetherlings in his deck yet, and once you go post-board, the Aetherlings do present a really unkillable threat. But in game 1, Stanislav really, if he draws enough lands and can actually fight here, I would be surprised if Ervin could really kill him. Unfortunately, when you're down 5 lands to 8 here in the control mirror, that is really tough to come back from.
We do see a lot of answers in his hand. I mean, I really didn't appreciate until I just looked at his grip exactly how hard it's going to be for Hosu to stick a creature. I think what Hosu wants to do as soon as he possibly can is get a Moorland Haunt on the table.
Because that's exactly what he's doing.
And yeah, and that Moorland Haunt now doing its thing.
We see there's another Restoration Angel down in the graveyard for Irvin Hozu. And so he's going to be able to put some amount of pressure up. But immediately we see Sifka start to trade cards from his hand for Moorland Haunt tokens, which isn't really a bad thing for Irvin, but Stanislav just needs to use up the spells in his hand, Luis.
Yeah, I mean, he does have this opportunity, which he's probably not that confident that he's going to resolve, but Tragic Slip doesn't really do a ton else besides kill Moorland Haunt tokens. And if you're going to have to kill a token anyway, you really don't want to take damage. Another way that Stanislav can lose is to take a bunch of damage and then get War Leader's Helixed out, especially with Snapcaster Mage.
Right.
Right, yeah, and 3 Pillars of Flame, Turn and Burn also coming out of Hozu's deck. Again, not really efficient burn spells, but they can add up in concert with Mage. And with Sifka trying to mill Hozu out, that does mean that, even as his library hits the graveyard, that's more Snapcaster Mage targets that Sifka is essentially going to be tutoring up for Hozu if Hozu can resolve them.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation here as we saw Hozu, he discarded his Supreme Verdict, doesn't really do much in this matchup, but also he didn't need that. Pass a turn back to Sifka, who did draw and play a Nephalia Drownyard. So now there's a Spirit token that was made from the Moorland Haunt, but Hozu has no more creatures in his graveyard currently, so he's got some amount of pressure with this one Spirit token, but I mean, looking at the board state, he doesn't really have a lot of pressure going on Sifka, and Sifka does. He's got the Drownyard.
He does have the Drownyard. I don't know that I am in a hurry to start using the Drownyard just yet. I mean, you're going to be able to mill your opponent out when you can, and I don't want to allow Hozu to start adding up those Spirit tokens.
Yeah, it's certainly a risk.
Yeah, Hozu needs to find a way to get something else in his in his graveyard on his own. Otherwise, and if Sifka says, well, I'm just not going to help you along those lines, it doesn't look like he has a great way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if Hozu does end up playing this Restoration Angel out, maybe a Snapcaster for a smaller Revelation, since he's so many lands ahead that he can just run out spells, and if Stanislav counters them, it's not the end of the world. That maybe that will naturally put more pressure on Stanislav, force him to kill the Angel or Snapcaster, which again restocks the Moorland Hunt.
All right, so what kind of a hand for Stanislav here, Zach, is he looking to set up where he can actually start using his Nephalia Drownyard?
I mean, I think what he has to have is just a fairly large number of answers to tokens, or at least an ability to not care about them. I mean, you really don't want to start doomblading Moorland Haunt tokens.
No.
I think you want to get a second Drownyard on the table. I mean, first you just want to draw a lot of cards, right, and just keep some parity. Then get a second Drownyard on the table, and you can really start, 6, 12, 18 after the game's gone longer, and not really give your opponent several turns to increment up Spirit tokens.
Okay.
And one of Stanislav's big answers there is he's got 3 Ratchet Bombs in his main deck.
Oh,
so
wow.
if he can just leave a Ratchet Bomb on 0, he either forces Irvin to keep only 1 to maybe 2 tokens in play, and then once he gets 3 to 4, he can just Ratchet Bomb them all away.
Right. Stanislav drew a Warp Physique here for the turn, which looks like he could use on that Angel.
Yeah, that is one of his options, and one he will elect to take.
You're so good at predicting the future, Marshall.
I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing and asking you guys.
But it looks like there might be a battle here, and this is one of the cards that Zach was looking at when we were looking at the deck lists.
The counterflux there.
Yeah, I mean, Counterflux allows you to just say no to anything you want. Now, they're a pretty scarce resource. He only has 2 copies of that to go with his Snapcaster Mages, but that means that if you want to stick something, either you want to say no to an opportunity or you want to force through a threat, you are going to be able to do that. And that's one of the few advantages Hozu decisively has coming into this matchup, is the ability to absolutely get the last word, as you will, and just say no.
All right, so Stanislav Sifka goes for a Doomblade now to take out the Restoration Angel, but that is also met with the counterflux, and Stanislav just has to say, okay, yep, I'm going to take 4.
Yeah, it looks like Hozu is just like overloading Stanislav with counters here.
And that really is how Hozu has to play this match. I mean, what we were talking about with the main deck Thundermaws, it's not just about the Thundermaws. It's about your willingness to assume a far more aggressive position in this matchup. And he's realizing he's got to fight over things like the Angel, because he's not going to win the game that goes super, super long.
Yeah, and even if he didn't have the Thundermaws in the main deck, he would have to play the same way. He'd have to just assume, look, I'm the beatdown deck. I'm not winning a game that goes 30 turns, so I've got to just counter Doomblade on Restoration Angel, a play you would normally not make in a control mirror.
Yeah, normally you're not going to try and prioritize a creature that isn't gaining you card advantage. You're going to prioritize fighting to gain advantage. But you're absolutely right. He does have to be the aggressive deck, and Sifka, his life total is not exactly safe right now.
No, he's facing down 4 damage, sitting at 14 currently, and he's in the tank about how he wants to approach this. A quick update from the middle table. Michael Mendel up a game over Gabor Koksis. All right, here's a Snapcaster Mage for Stanislav Sifka, presumably Doomblade here, Luis.
Yeah, he's gonna. Looks like he's like pulling out some kind of removal, and because he doesn't have enough cards in hand to really use Warp Physique, it would be funny if you get into a counter war over Warp Physique, and then you don't have enough cards in hand to actually kill your original target. So, not that I expect Stanislav to do that, but that is a kind of funny interaction.
It's interesting. He could have theoretically waited for next turn to see if he drew a land to try and Snapcaster Doomblade with a Rewind backup. I mean, fighting a main phase counter battle is not really exactly where you want to be. And he does have the... Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
so
he does have Essence Scatter. He's just Essence Scatter, the Snapcaster
Yeah, and
Mage.
Essence Scatter isn't a hard counter, but in this particular case, it might as well be because it counters Snapcaster Mage.
And Snapcaster Mage has to be one of the prime targets for Essence Scatter in this matchup, Luis.
Yeah, I mean, you will Essence Scatter Hellkite if you have to, but countering a Snapcaster that's going to bring back a counterspell or Revelation is one of the better uses.
All right, speaking of Revelation, I think that's what we have here. Yeah, Irvin Hozu is going to just completely tap out now that he has his opponent tapped out.
Yeah, and he's just firing off a Rev for 3, it looks like, which isn't actually huge, but because he's expecting to untap with now Morlun Hunt. Oh,
I think
looks
it's
like
for
he-
Yeah, I
it's
think
for
it's for
6.
It's for 6, yeah.
Since I guess the Snapcaster got countered, so.
Right, Snapcaster got countered. That's the 2 mana on the bottom. All the rest went into this huge
Yeah, so
Revelation.
he's just completely refilling his hand then.
Yeah, this has got to be a little depressing, Zach, if you're sitting in Stanislav Sifka's seat.
I mean, somewhat. The thing is that, you're trying to run your opponent out of cards anyway, so in a sense that's 2 Drown Yard activations. Also, he doesn't have a huge clock. You have a couple of counter spells, and, there are only so many threats that he can draw. I mean, you've dealt with a Hellkite, you've dealt with several Restoration Angels now. The Morlun Haunt's on the battlefield is something you have to worry about, but, I mean, obviously you're never excited for your opponent to draw 6 cards, but I think that you could be in situations where you're a lot more scared of that than Sifka is right here.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels like there's just a subset of cards in Irvin Hosu's deck that really matter in this matchup, and there's not that many of them. And for the most part, especially in Game 1 here, Sifka has answers to those.
Yeah, I mean, in a normal control matchup, when your opponent resolves a Rev for 6 and you just have nothing to do, it's usually very, very bad for you. Here, even though it's not great for Stanislav, he has way more of a shot than he would if he was just playing, say, the red, white, blue mirror.
Okay.
So Nephalia Drownyard strutting its stuff here on the battlefield and showing what a powerful land it is as a win condition.
Though
It's a
Morlun Hunt
land.
quietly being like the most important card for Irvin to draw this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Morlun Haunt is that, when we were talking about it before the game, Morlun Haunt on turn 18, not that much of a clock, but he was really able to get Morlun Haunt out quite early. And getting the spirit damage in earlier on, I mean, A, you just get to make more spirits, B, you get to attack more times. And it just makes the rest of the threats in your deck more important. I mean, all of a sudden, Sifka has to respect Augur of Bolas as an offensive threat. He has to respect Snapcaster Mage as an offensive threat, because all those nickel and dimes are going to start to add up.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, Stanislav Sifka is sitting at 13 life. He's under a little bit of pressure. Here's a rewind from him.
It looks like Tomáš Nagy, the Hungarian coach, and actually their most experienced players, taking a look at Stanislav's graveyard just a second ago to kind of see what was going on and where the pace of the game was heading.
All right.
And Sifka does have a Forbidden Alchemy in the graveyard that he can flash back if he ever gets a chance to use it. I believe he already flashed back a Think Twice earlier in the game.
Yeah, I think the alchemy was the main thing they were looking at, along with, what spells does he have to Snapcaster, and there we go.
And there it is. Forbidden Alchemy flashback for Stanislav Sifka.
It's his own Sphinx's Revelation.
It costs
to
as
get
much.
rid of some of those cards that you put into your hand.
It costs quite a bit. Unfortunately, he doesn't get to keep them all. He gets to hold them for a little while.
Forbidden Alchemy, actually a card that we thought was going to be a major player in Standard in R&D. We thought it was going to be one of the cards that really enabled the blue-black deck at the last minute, and not really at the last minute.
It did for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask Ben Stark, but before Sphinx's Revelation came out, Blue Black was one of the best decks in Standard. And
Yes.
it was mostly on the Forbidden Alchemy engine.
Yeah.
The engine, of course, being the fact that it loads up your graveyard with more Thinks Twice, more copies of Alchemy.
Did I just see what I thought I saw?
He did. Stanislav hit one of his 2 copies of Curse of Death's Hold, which is a
Yeah.
permanent answer to Moreland Hunt.
Wow. Okay. So now, unfortunately for him, of course, his opponent Irvin Hosu has 1 million untapped lands and a grip. So
Yeah.
resolving that could be problematic.
Yeah, but he still has to take it and kind of try to either set it up or just go for it. I mean, right after your opponent rev for 6 might not be the safest time to go for anything. But from Stanislav's point of view, you have to look at how is this improving? What over the next couple turns, how many counters am I going to draw?
Okay.
And at the end of the day, I mean, if something's a must counter threat, you know, I mean, even if your opponent can deal with it, it's still one of the things that matters that your opponent has to deal with. Sort of like, oh, Baneslayer Angel just gets Doombladed. It's like,
Yeah.
well, sometimes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
They also must Doomblade it.
And Hosu has 5 counter spells plus 3 Snapcasters, and he's already gone through 2 rewinds and the rewind and 2 counterflux. So
All right, so Sifka does go for it here. Curse of Death's Hold on the stack right now, but here's a Snapcaster Mage. It's an interesting one. If that were to get countered and he didn't have another way to do it, it would also die to the curse. But
Yeah.
it is resolving here. No Essence Scatter for
No,
Stanislav Sifka this time.
And Stanislav's syncopates have really lost a ton of value.
Yeah, because he's so far behind.
behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, he missed something like 5 land drops.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just a few of them.
So yeah, this is the desperation, just hope this resolves sort of thing.
Right. Now, it ended up picking up a rewind from the graveyard, so Hosu has all of his mana available.
And truthfully, I mean, it wasn't that far from resolving. Hosu only had that 1 counterspell. Now he has a Think Twice and a pair of Azorius Charms, another Sphinx's Revelation, to try and draw into stuff.
Now we see a hand. Go ahead, Zach.
No, just the more of that he had to use, the more vulnerable he would have been to syncopate.
Yeah, we see a hand enter the the arena there, like, wait, and this is, again, one of the aspects of team play that we're not used to seeing. Generally speaking, Magic is a one-person game, but here at the World Magic Cup, you can actually take advice from your team at the table, and that's what's happening. Now there's a Moreland Hunt activation, basically just making sure that the correct mana was untapped by Rewind and then tapped for the different spells that were needed to make sure that everything they wanted to do on end step there could happen. And it looks like they've got it all sorted out. There's 4 mana, 3 creatures, 4 power for Irvin Hosu to keep chipping away at Stanislav Sifka, who's all the way down to 12.
Yeah, that's a 4-turn clock for Hosu. Even if Sifka blocks the Snapcaster Mage here, we can just start making more spirits. And I mean, this game is in many ways been about Moreland Hunt. I think it's been about Sifka missing a zillion land drops, but Hunt has done some work here.
Yeah, even with all the missed land drops, if Hosu did not have Moreland Hunt, we might actually see a kind of different outcome here with the spirits not being able to pressure Stanislav all the way down to 10 with a War Leader's Helix now in the hand.
And that's what you've got to be worried about. I mean, again, Sifka obviously doesn't know the cards in his opponent's hand. With Hosu holding 6 cards, you have no idea exactly how much burn you're going to need to fear at any given point.
Stanislav Sifka sitting at 10, somewhat precarious, but he looks like he needs to help out a teammate here for a second. Again, this is another one of the skills that gets tested in this format, is sometimes you get distracted by your teammates who need a hand, and you got to come back and immerse yourself in the single game that you're in at the moment. All right, looks like we were going to see another huge Sphinx's Revelation here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And he still has 3 extra mana untapped on top of it. Sifka's looked away for the moment. He's not going to like it when he comes back to the table, though. Not great news for you here, Stan.
Yeah, it is not easy to do this, of just getting out of your current game state, seeing another one, making meaningful commentary upon the new game state, as opposed to saying, like, yeah, well, Thundermaw Hellkite's good.
Yeah.
And coming back.
Well, and also being able to really judge yourself and say, look, I'm not able to decipher all of the factors in this period of time. We have somebody like Luis in the booth who's exceptional at that. But I was talking to Ben Stark. He's in the top 4 of the World Championship, and he told me yesterday. He said, look, that isn't one of my strong points. He said, like, as a teammate on these things, I can't just snapshot the games and give you great advice. I need to work it through a little bit. He can do it for himself, but it's hard to come into a game when it's underway.
Yeah, Ben.
Oh, and we hear Sifka say, wait, how much?
And then just immediately give the yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of resigned to his fate this game.
Yeah.
Draw 1,000 cards, please.
All right, there's 6 cards.
And Stanislav would have fought over Cursive Death's Hold if he had a counterspell, so he's not shy about just saying, look, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I obviously don't have anything to do about it. So do your worst.
Yeah, I mean, I like it when people pretend like, tap their mana for Dispel. Okay, I guess I won't Dispel your Revelation for 8. It's like, come on.
I'm really
a
fooling
tough sell.
him.
Yeah, it's a very tough sell.
There are more important things I'm going to have to counter later on.
Right. All right. Another Moreland Haunt for Irvin Hozu. Passes the turn back, and you see the pace quicken here a little bit.
Sika just machine gunning through his deck right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
he has fewer decisions at this point.
Yeah, Augur into Think Twice is kind of exactly what he wants to do there. So, I mean, it's not bad for him. He's just got a long way to go from here.
Yeah, and depending on how big these Revelations ended up being, it looks like that Stanislav might have an outside shot of just drown yarding Hosu out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you've got to really be aware of when you're Revelation. I mean, normally you just want to draw as many cards as possible. When your opponent's got a Moreland Haunt and mana for a second one, I mean, Sifka at 10, it's a pretty quick clock, but that still means Hozu needs to resolve a couple of burn spells.
Yeah, we won't be able to get an exact count on the library, and we won't have our spotter check it, as it could potentially affect strategic decisions. As you know, maybe Sifka's just sort of ignoring his opponent and being like, yeah, this game's over, but then he goes, you know, drops a drown yard, mill you, and all of a sudden things can change if there's not a big clock. So
looks like we might be nearing the end states here as Pillar of Flames start to fly out at Stanislav.
now, has Hosu used up any War Leader's Helix? I think he had one in his hand earlier.
No, he's got the full 2, so I think he's just gonna
go for it here.
Yeah.
And
There's
he's
a
got
Helix,
the one
and
extra
there's
mana
another
to
Helix.
Oh, okay, he has
Yeah,
tons of
and
extra
Sifka
mana.
says, okay, you got me. We'll go to the next game. And in a minute, we're going to take a look at the sideboard options, as those are very critical in these control mirrors. All right, we're going to take a look at the back table here, which is Dak Vaden is the greatest thief in the multiverse. Follow his adventures in the Magic the Gathering comic produced by IDW. A special promo card unique to the IDW comic series comes in each issue. Find out more about these comics at wizards.com/magic merchandise. All right, so we're going to be going to the back table.
Looks like a Korbel versus Kopecky here.
Okay.
And,
so let's take a quick look at what we've got. What is Forble playing?
So Korbel actually has a Jund deck with a pretty cool addition. We were looking over the list, and he's got 2 Chandra Pyromancers in the main deck.
Ooh, that sounds... Oh, Pyromaster.
Yeah, he's got actually 4 Planeswalkers, a Liliana the Veiled, the 2 Chandras, and a Garruk Primal Hunter.
All right, so Super Friends, the slightly darker edition. Now, Zach, what about on the other side with Kopecky?
Kopecky is playing the deck that I would have sleeved up had I been playing this weekend. That is Bant Hexproof with 4 main deck Fiendslayer Paladins.
Looks like he's really owning the Hexproof theme
I was
here.
gonna say, it looks like he's already got an aura of some kind.
He's wearing a Rancor, and he's hidden from view, apparently, although since we're indoors, he sticks out maybe a little more.
Yeah.
I don't really even have a comment I can contribute to the awasomeness of that face paint.
Yeah, that's pretty
I'm just
sweet.
going to let it speak for itself.
Yeah, interesting looking at Kopecky's deck list. Immediately 4 Spectral Flight. We're like, okay, yeah.
And it looks like a 5-card hand, but I think Ban Hexproof is one of the decks that wins the most off the lowest number of cards.
Yeah, it mulligans incredibly because all you're trying to do is just assemble a combination, essentially. You want, like, Stalker Enchantment. You
All
want
right. Stage
Geist
1
Saint
complete,
Trap,
Zach.
Emerson's Pilgrim.
Yeah, so there's a Stalker there to lead things up for Leos Kopecky. And let's see what the answer is here. Yeah. All right, well, there is a Farseek for a Jordan Korbel. Now, you know, that's really one of the ideal starts,
Yeah.
Luis, for a Jund deck.
Yeah, I mean, Jund is a deck kind of built off the turn 2 Farseek. And one of the reasons, actually, a lot of the guys played in the World Championship this year is that the addition of Lifebane, Zombie, and Scavenging Ooze gives Jund plays when it doesn't have Farseek. So, of course, when you do here, you know, the deck goes smoothly and is one of the best decks. Now that you have these low drops that are actually relevant, you don't rely as much on drawing Farseek.
Okay.
It still, I think, just transforms your. I mean, Jund games with Farseek and Jund games without Farseek almost feel like you're playing 2 different decks. But I mean, yeah, it clearly is a huge advantage to be able to make other relevant plays in the first couple of turns of the game.
Now, Zach, you said that you would have sleeved up a similar deck to what Kopecky's playing here, as he's got his Invisible Stalker on the battlefield, plays a Hollow Fountain untapped. What are the cards that you fear?
With Hexproof, I mean,
if you are the hexproof player and you're coming to the tournament, what are the cards that you don't want to see?
You don't want to see Barter and Blood. You don't want to see Liliana. You don't want there to be a zillion Supreme Verdicts in the main deck. You can beat 2. Beating 4 is more annoying. But even those you have, I think, good plans against, and Voice of Resurgence, Strangleroot Geist out of the board. Kopecky not main decking Voice, bringing it out of the sideboard, though. But I think those, obviously more Oblivion Rings are bad for you, more Rays of Revelation are bad for you, but people just aren't playing those cards in very large volumes. So I think it's a good choice for the tournament today.
All right, so Kopecky has made a strong play here, Zach.
Yeah, that's an unflinching courage on the Invisible Stalker. Although it's kind of funny paired up against that Nighthawk, but we are about to see a crushing right here.
Yeah,
What is this going to be?
Savage
beating. Savage indeed. Is this is 7? 5+1/+1 counters upon initial
so
casting?
slamming for 8-point life swing or a 16-point life swing a turn.
Yes.
Draining for 8 a turn. So
That's right.
Kopecky essentially all in right here and saying, okay, show me an Edict effect, because if you don't have it, this is going to be a short game.
That's right, and that's part of the game plan here for this deck, right? I mean, it is able to close the door incredibly quickly and demand specific answers that a lot of decks just don't have.
Right, and that's exactly what you're counting on. I mean, obviously, if people are prepared for hexproof, it gets a lot worse, but what you're counting on is your opponent to have answers to the wrong questions.
Right.
In this case, Korbel, since missing his 4th land, couldn't actually play anything anyway. But even if he draws a land, his hand has a bunch of Huntmasters and Thragtusks, which
More
the
pants.
hexproof deck doesn't really care about.
No, more pants enter the battlefield as Rancor is also going to be suited up here.
Yeah.
This thing is just huge now.
That reminds me of Ben Stark's name for the deck when Josh played in Atlantic City was Ghost Pants. Because it has Geists and Invisible Stalkers on a ghost, and it has pants. So.
That's fantastic. Pants are a slang term that Magic players use, for those of you that haven't heard that one, for auras.
Yeah, and I think Ghost Pants is a much better name than Ben Hexproof.
I think
It's
we
less-
should adopt that.
Less descriptive, but way funnier.
Yeah. I mean, what are you looking for a deck name?
Yeah, now we also saw, Zach, here that now the game's over, but there's an Avacyn's Pilgrim that was played. Why would he play that?
He plays that to protect against Liliana, the Veil. Walks more into Barter and Blood, but Barter's going to get you anyway. So,
Okay, so we're going to head into the middle table in just a second. We'd like to thank Gaming Etc. for being an official card retailer here at Worlds Week. Use a promo code WORLDCUP when ordering on GamingEtc.com to earn 10% off all singles and accessories. For more information, visit GamingEtc.com. All right, so what do we got on the middle table here, gentlemen? This is Michael Mendel.
Yep, playing looks like Kibler's deck once again.
the actual exact 60.
So Zach, this is a deck that you have some fondness for. It's a red-green beats.
Oh yeah, this deck does all the things I like. Just mana curving into giant monsters and also bringing cards that just win you the game in out of the board. There's very few things I like more than casting Burning Earth and watching my opponent, who's done a bunch of adorable things like gaining incremental advantage for 8 turns, suddenly find him or herself unable to cast anything.
You're so happy right now.
Oh, there's nothing more excited I get than playing Chalice of the Void for 1 against a deck with 31 mana cards, or Blood Moon against a deck with no basic lands, or Burning Earth.
Zach Hill, a guy who knows how to have a good time. What about you, Luis? What about on the other side of the table here?
So the Hungarian deck here is actually pretty awesome. It's green-white beats, but not even like hexproof. Like just Voice of Resurgence, Strangleroot Geist, Lockdown Smiter, Silverblade Paladin, Advent of the Worm, Sublime Archangel, and even curving up to Sigarda, Host of Herons.
Wow, that's really interesting. We haven't seen a build like that in Standard much. Now, this is Team Unified Standard, which can definitely push the card pool in some different directions, but this isn't one that we saw very often here this weekend.
No,
this week.
the last time I've seen a deck like this, it was green-white humans, which had a slightly lower curve and certainly not as much on the high end. But this deck looks like kind of like a bigger Bant Hexproof. Its creatures are not quite as invulnerable, but it's got larger creatures and presumably a slightly faster clock with Silverblade Paladins. Though that, as we saw in the last game, Hexproof can also present a very fast clock.
Now, it looks like a bit of a slugfest here then on our middle table, Zach, as we've got two decks looking to play creatures and attack with them over and over. I don't know how much removal there is between these two decks.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 copies of Celestia Charm over here in the Hungarian deck.
Well, that's pretty good versus the the big red-green, right?
It is, and what I think is really decisive are the 4 copies of Unflinching Courage, which not only win races for you, but take you out of burn range. And the red-green deck does not have access to Kibler's Gruul War Chants, which seem like the kind of thing that you'd want in a matchup like this.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And Kibler actually coming into the World Championship said that Armadillo Cloak, Unflinching Courage, was the card he was actually most worried about.
Oh, wow.
Because you throw that on a Sigarda or an Advent of the Worm even, and just crash in for 7. It's pretty tough to race that.
That's right. All right, so play is underway here. Stomping Ground to kick things off, and a Sun Petal Grove. So 2 dual lands. There's a Domri Raid off the top for Michael Mendel.
No elves, and no even turn 2 play for Michael Mendel is kind of not how he wants to start.
Yeah, and
all right. Strangleroot Geist doing what it does. Enter the battlefield tapped, basically. It's already attacking, and it's going to get in there for 2 damage for Gabor Coxis. Let's see what happens on Michael Mendel's. He's got to have something here, right? Oh, yeah, he drew that Domri Raid, so he's going to play that out.
Yeah, this has been a pretty slow start for him, but Domri is sort of where you want to be. He's got a removal spell, not really what you want to be using on the Strangleroot Geist. All that Coxis needs is some more lands.
All right, Voice of Resurgence, one of the key cards, I would assume, Luis, that would lead somebody to try to play a green-white deck.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the most powerful cards in this color combination. This isn't really the matchup where it shines, but you still have them, and they're still pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, like both Strangleroot Geist and Voice, they're going to quickly get outclassed and outsized. But what they are good at doing, they're great at chump blocking any threats on the ground while applying a little bit of pressure. And that Voice token can certainly get pretty big in a board stall.
Yeah, and with Sublime Archangels in your deck, you really just want to have creatures in play. You kind of don't care what they are.
Yeah. Now this is a game 3 here in this match, and we're not surprised by that, are we, gentlemen? It was 2 decks looking to kind of slug it out, so they've already reached game 3 now. Neither match has finished on the other side. We're holding one of them.
Yeah, and Coxis has a kind of unpleasant choice here where he's got the Arbor Elf, he's got a bunch of 3-drops, and he just has to play his 1-drop instead of playing a 2-drop if he wants to guarantee he hits 3 next turn, which, again, not the most fun. You'd rather just either draw the land or just be able to play the 2-drop, but if he wants to cast Oblivion Ring next turn, guaranteed, assuming the elf survives, then Arbor Elf is really his only option. But
and that is unfortunate for him with Domri Raid on the board. It's just going to be hard to stick that mana elf, and it's not as though he can decide to mask the fact that he's screwed on mana. I mean, he's missed 2 land drops now, so yeah, he's really between a rock and a hard place right now.
Yeah, the Domri is going to go down to 1 here no matter what happens, but because even if the Flint Hoof board blocks, but even just having it in play, it does eventually threaten to disrupt his plans. So it looks like Mendel has to decide whether to give Gabor either a 3/2 Strangleroot Geist or an Elemental token.
All right, but Gabor is going to take the line of playing out his Arbor Elf. He's going to hope that that's going to stay on the battlefield until he gets to untap and you can start deploying some more expensive spells.
Mendel could also just hit Coxius with a giant bonfire for 2 right here, which would be a huge setback. Turn that Voice into a 1/1, get Arbor Elf off the board, and clear the way for Strangleroot Geist. And that Flint of Boar might even start attacking.
Yeah, so Domri Raid's going to plus to start things off. He reveals a Hellrider to it, puts it into his hand, and now he's surveying the scene.
Yeah,
5 mana.
Despite Mendel's slow start, I think he's been pretty firmly in command of this game. Just the fact that Coxis has missed a bunch of land drops really contributed.
Yeah, so Zach, you called this play a minute ago, and wow, what a sweeper. Basically took him off of a mana source, got one of the uses from his Voice of Resurgence down, and finished off the Strangleroot Geist all with 1 card. Huge play for him.
Yeah, that was a giant bonfire, and it's exactly why it's good in a matchup like this, and exactly what red brings to the table in terms of a creature fight. I mean, burn in the form of Flames of the Firebrand bonfire, really, really good in these kinds of matchups. And
Domri Raid getting plussed again, and he hits another Hellrider. Jeez. Getting way ahead thanks to the 3-mana Planeswalker Domri Raid, and he certainly has a lot of beatdowns incoming once he wants to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, he can drop a Hellkite, a Hellrider, like all sorts of things, double Strangleroot Geist. I mean, there's a ton of options here.
So he's just trying to decide what's going to get him the most amount of damage over the next 2 to 3 turns.
Yeah, you have options here. You can keep Flenifbor back to protect your Domri while attacking with a Thundermaw Hellkite or a Hellrider.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to attack with Hellrider right now because it just trades with a voice.
I think Thundermaw is like the safest play. Just Thundermaw hit for 5, and then with a bunch of other backup in hand, there's not much that goes wrong, even if you do get Oblivion Ringed on your next turn.
If he draws a land next turn, he can do Hellrider plus Strangleroot Geist and just pile in for a ton.
I think you're actually kind of excited to get Oblivion Ringed. If it takes up Cox's entire turn. You're meanwhile drawing just more cards with Domri Raid. You're hitting for more in the air, but he likes to play it safe with 2 copies of Strangleroot.
So he leads things off with the Flint Hoof Boar. It goes unblocked, and then he's going to kind of set up huge Hellrider turns going forward with 2 Strangleroot Geist.
Playing the double Geist does indicate that he's looking to just play a Hellrider and attack with everything.
That's right now, and Gabor, of course, knows about both Hellriders. The problem is, even with that knowledge, he just doesn't have a lot of tools to work with being stuck on lands. He did draw a Mutavault here, so he gets to Oblivion Ring 1 of the Strangleroot Geist. Now that is not the detention sphere.
Yeah,
so
that you're looking for.
Yeah, so he's just going to have to settle for taking out a Geist.
Looks like targeting may be reapplied. Nope. Looks like it's the Strangleroot Geist down.
Well, and if Mendel had the read that Cox's was just going to cast Oblivion Ring anyway, then that was an excellent play. You'd much rather have one of your 2 Strangleroot Geists taken care of than a Hellrider or a Thundermaw Hellkite.
It certainly makes a 1-for-1 a lot worse when you can add more to the board. I mean, otherwise he could have gotten in for 5 with the dragon, but it would be gone.
Do we have a visual, or do y'all remember how many loyalty that Domri Raid has currently?
It's on 2.
Oh, okay. That's what it looks like.
So enough to fight, but not enough to fight and stick around.
Excuse me, Domri's on 3.
So yeah, if Michael also now has the option to play, well, he's actually 1 red short of playing Mortars and a Hellrider or kicked Mortars, but looks like Domri's just going to keep ticking up.
Jeez.
Wow.
All right, there's a Gore Clan Rampager.
Gore Clan Rampager is revealed off Domri. He's hit 3 in a row, and yeah.
And you can see why we kind of lost it. This card means that nothing's ever going to die on Mendel's side in combat, and he's also going to be able to punch through a lot of damage on any turn that he has 2 extra mana.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a pretty scary board. I mean, just take a little snapshot of that one right there, and you can't be too happy if your Gabor Cox is facing this board down.
Yeah, he gets to Mendel gets to slam with, at the very least, the Thundermaw, potentially the other creatures if you'd like.
Yeah, and I think you just start getting in here if you're Mendel. I mean, you've got just so much pressure. You've got Rampager, you've got Hellrider. You're attacking for tons in the air. I mean, a double block on Flenifbor is like not even very bad for you.
Yeah, it kills both the creatures, leaves just an elemental behind.
Plus, it looks like Gabor's only going to be able to cast 1 spell a turn for the duration of the game here, and he can just keep pounding out threats. Even if he's making slightly suboptimal attacks on like an individual level, he can just keep overwhelming him with resources.
Yeah, and part of the reason that the red-green deck is so good is that since all the creatures have haste, even if you're 1-for-1ing after they've gotten to attack, you've gotten almost a full card's value out of them.
Exactly.
And
all right.
It's just way easier to 1-for-1 when you have a Domri Raid drawing you tons of cards.
Well, yeah, the Domri Raid also, the hit rate has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's true.
So we see the Oblivion Ring take out the Thundermaw Hellkite, but again, like we mentioned, there's just so much more hasty power and toughness that's going to be coming in.
So, yeah. It looks like
Do a little dice dance here, but that's nice. We can see that one a lot better. And there it is, Hellrider number 1, followed up by another Strangleroot Geist, and that's it. Michael Mendel is going to take down the match here and improve the Czech Republic's chances of advancing to the finals here dramatically, as we're going to go to the front table again, which is where Stanislav Sivka will be sitting in a minute. We see.
Yeah, he's taking his time. Hey, Coach. looks like Stanislav made it back to the table, but he's waiting on his opponent now.
That's his actual plan, is to get a game loss for his opponent for not being seated on time.
Yeah, Judge.
Yeah, Judge, excuse me. I don't know where my
I don't think this
opponent
matchup's that bad. He can still keep his Magic career intact and play this one out.
Looks like the Hungarians are deploying their full squad here.
went. Oh, man. Team effort.
Now, Luis, I heard the story about the green face over there. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, that it's apparently the Czech Shrek.
I thought you might appreciate that.
I like that.
That wordplay.
Yeah.
So why, I mean, that sort of explains the story.
Well, no, it doesn't
That's what
fully
he's
explain it.
claiming. Yeah. But we're also just going to let that sit as it is.
I mean,
okay.
we don't have any context, so
No.
we really can't.
Don't need.
But
Not that you need
Czech
it.
Shrek
Yeah.
sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, alliteration's
I
always
like
good.
it. Well, that's assonance, but hey, you know, whatever makes you feel better. A shout out to my English teacher in 5th grade or whoever, if she's watching this.
All right, let's take a look here. All right, so Stanislav Sivka deciding to be on the draw here.
Well, that's something I haven't seen for a while. I mean, in the control versus control matchup, it's certainly a lot more plausible than anything else.
Yeah. The cards are what's most important. It's not like he's going to get tempoed out here, right?
Well, and I think that's exactly it. I mean, you have so many cards that just answer things for 2 and 3 mana that you're not too worried about falling behind. If you're behind by a land drop or two, you don't feel like you're going to get attacked to death really early on. The longer the game goes, the better it is to just be up a card.
And also, Stanislav, all his answers cost less mana than Hosu's threats, so he's able to, be behind on land drops as long as he's hitting them every turn. Even if he's a mana behind, it still doesn't really matter too much.
And the extra card, of course, contributing to him hitting those land drops every turn. All right, so players are in the early stages, similar starts for both of them, a little bit of cycling going on here from both, and Stanislav is taking a look at his hand here. Does he have a... No, he doesn't have anything. He's just going to draw his card for
and
the turn and
he
keep hitting
chose
land drops.
Not to flashback Think Twice there, just because he doesn't want to have to discard.
Okay.
Oh, right, because he elected to draw first. That means that every turn he's 8 and
Yeah.
7, 8 and 7. So if he draws an additional card, that doesn't really get him very far.
That's right.
The good old maximum hand size roll.
Yeah.
Not sinking to the level of playing Reliquary Tower quite yet.
And
but-
Cameo Emblem is what you need.
All right, there's the Think Twice, though, for Irvin Hosu.
Oh, man.
Ooh.
Spicy.
And we got cremated there.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, Stanislav has 1 cremate in his board. And
Wow.
the main reason is to stop Snapcaster mages or, against potential other graveyard decks. But, you can pick up a little bit of value here and there, and getting the Think Twice is pretty nice.
Wow, is that an Archangel of Thune?
It is.
Okay, so it's an interesting one in this setup. It's actually just a 3-power flyer until he starts getting Moreland Haunt tokens or Augurs of Bolas online. It's just going to be making
Yeah.
itself bigger and bigger and bigger.
And you could get a counter off War Leader's Helix, but mainly it's got to be just because Irvin needs to put in more ways to actually kill Stanislav.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think Irvin just realizes he's the aggressive deck, and the way you do that is just bring in threats. I mean, it's not aggressive in the traditional sense of Elf and Dagor Clan Rampage or
Right.
Experiment one, but I mean, he's not going to win the game sitting back and doing nothing.
Now, Stanislav Sivka doesn't have access to any true sweepers, right, Zach? It's a little bit more of like a spot removal combined with Ratchet Bomb.
Right, he's got Ratchet Bomb Curse of Death's Hold, but he doesn't have anything it looks like in the way of Mutilate or even Barter in Blood, so he's going to have to spot remove every single one of these creatures.
Okay, so these are just threats that then must be answered. And then as we know, Irvin Hosu has access to Sphinx's Revelation, where he can then just try to get ahead on cards and
Exactly.
eventually present enough threats that Stanislav Sivka can't answer them all.
Now, the downside is, as Luis said, all of Sivka's answers cost less than like all of Hosu's threats. So it allows Sivka to do things like, okay, I'm going to pay 2 mana to Doomblade that, and then flashback a Think Twice, and then just sort of sneak in different ways to gain advantage while Hosu's spending essentially his entire turn to cast threats like these.
Okay.
Okay.
Ooh, so there's a big one. Tamio can put a lot of pressure on the game from a much different angle, Zach.
And that's why I think we saw Sivka not electing to kill the Archangel at the end of the last turn, wanting to Oh, sorry, no, he just wasn't holding a removal spell. But he did have a Dissipate, not enough mana to cast it, and we're seeing that Tamiyo bite that does do a huge Thundermaw.
Jeez, Thundermaw Hellkite here for Irvin Hosu eats Tamiyo. Now the Angel didn't get to untap thanks to Tamiyo's ability, but still.
Yeah, that was a pretty big swing, and I think that Irvin mainly just, you know, we were talking about Tamiyo giving you an emblem so Stanislav didn't have to discard. I think that's what he was trying to prevent.
I see what you did there, Louis.
Right, but I mean, in reality, the Tamiyo is a big threat, and getting to kill it for free out of Thundermaw is one of the big disadvantages to Tamiyo, and Stanislav is certainly not happy about this.
Yeah, he's got to be really unhappy about that turn of events. And if we take a look at Sifka's hand here,
it's actually surprising.
Yeah, he just doesn't have a whole lot going on. You know, he's got a pretty reasonable hand for a late game. He's got Snapcaster Mage and Dissipate to help keep threats at bay, and he's got double Nephalia Drownyard. So if the game were to go very long, he'd be pretty happy. But really, he just needs removal. For the blue-black deck, that's normally not an issue. He flashed back Think Twice there, and then played a land, shift the turn back.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how Stanislav has all this cheap removal and all these Drownyards, and he's actually just drawn no black cards that kill creatures.
Yeah.
And might just die to these two giant beasts.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting, Zach, you mentioned this earlier. You were saying, yeah, you know, there's this camp of people that says, well, just dice the Doomblade anyway. It's not that good. Well, sometimes they don't have the Doomblade, and take a look at what we have here.
This is one of the
bomb threats.
Yeah, this is one of the craziest board states I have ever seen in my life. Like, your opponent is blue-black control with 7 cards in hand. You've gone 5-drop 3-power creature into another 5-drop, and they're just smashing. They're just beating up on Sifka right now, as Sifka cannot muster a response.
It's really interesting because getting those resolved in the first place could be difficult versus Sifka, and then you got to figure that even if you did resolve them, that he's got an answer in his hand already, and neither of those things has happened here.
I think the Tamiyo is actually what cost Sifka the game here, because he didn't counter the Archangel because he had the Tamiyo, and that also simultaneously tapped him out and let Thundermaw resolve.
Mm-hmm. Did he have enough mana to cast the Tamiyo? Or sorry, to cast a counter spell the turn before? Like, did he just voluntarily let the Angel resolve? I thought he only had 2 mana on tap. I might have been wrong about that.
He may have not had enough to counter it, but either way, the Tamiyo did stop him from dissipating the Hellkite.
Right, exactly. And the Archangel Clock, while relevant, is not nearly as much damage as he's facing right now.
Looks like these matches are about to be tied 1-1. I mean, with Counterflux plus War Leader's Helix in hand, Irvin is presenting lethal with Counterspell backup.
Yeah, here comes 10 damage to kick things off.
Just kick things off with a solid 10 damage.
Yeah, just like, let's start off with this. Push you down to 2 Stanislav Sifka. And as you mentioned, he's got a burn spell in his hand in the form of War Leader's Helix. He's got a Counterflux to back it up, but also he doesn't really need to do anything. He can just say, I attack you next turn, because it's obvious at this point that Sifka has no answers, and that's it. He went for the upkeep War Leader's Helix and earned a concession. So we're going to go back to the back table with the matches tied at 1-1. This is where it gets really intense down in the feature match area, as you'll have both teams huddled around. You can see right now, grab a chair, guys, because this is going to be a nail biter here.
I'm still just flabbergasted by that match, guy. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Magic 2014 is available now on Magic Online. Crack some packs for M14 Booster Draft and Seal Deck queues right now. Starting August 2nd, you can enter 64-player Premier Drafts and Top 8 Seal Deck events to earn invitations to the Magic 2014 Release Events Championship to be held on August 18th. For more information, visit mtgonline.com. All right. The Czech Shrek staring down his opponent, and I gotta say, it's kind of intimidating. He's looking at his opening hand here: Ethereal Armor, Invisible Stalker, and a bunch of lands.
Yeah,
is that good enough?
Not the optimal ban hexproof hand.
No, not totally awesome. I mean, he's mulling into 6 though, and you have an Invisible Stalker, so I think you kind of just have to keep that hand. But definitely not a fearsome clock presented by the 2/2 first strike.
So at this point, Luis, is he just assuming then that his Invisible Stalker is going to live and just hoping to draw a bunch of auras to make it huge?
I mean, he's assuming it's going to live because you kind of have to.
He just has no other choice.
The Bant deck, and yeah, I mean, obviously any aura would be the main thing he's looking for. It looks like he drew a Fiendslayer Paladin, which is, another threat's not too bad. It's a decent threat in its own right. The real sweat here is whether Corbel can draw an untapped land on turn 2, and he does, since otherwise he would not have been able to cast this turn 2 Farseek, and now he's set up to have all his options available.
Yeah, and he's actually got a pair of Nighthawks, it looks like, in his hand, which are pretty good in this matchup. I mean, they're not going to be as huge as a Unflinching Courage giant hexproof creature, but they do help mitigate some of your own life loss, as well as some of the hexproof deck's life gain. So not quite as good as an Edict effect, not quite as good as catching a Invisible Stalker with a Bonfire, or a Fiendslayer Paladin with a Bonfire, but still, reasonably relevant in this matchup, as he has to kind of transform around the fact that a lot of his removal spells just can't interact with his opponent.
And it'll be interesting to see whether he chooses to Bonfire away this, lone Invisible Stalker, which is not an unreasonable play. I mean, that is what you will often do. So it disrupts, Corbel's curve here. He doesn't get to play a creature, but killing Invisible Stalker before it picks up a bunch of auras is generally the safest route.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Because the more auras that get piled upon that Stalker, the harder it is to Bonfire away. And he doesn't have, for example, a Liliana right now that can help him say, hey, I'm not worried about that.
All right, so game 3 here in the third match, Czech Republic versus Hungary. This is a big turn here for Kopecky. He's going to be able to land that Invisible Stalker, and this is going to represent what he is going to use to try to win this game. Now, if Corbel decides to Bonfire it away, could put Kopecky in a pretty tough position here, as he's going to need to draw more threats pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he does have the Fiendslayer Paladin, but that can actually be interacted with. Maybe not with spells, but with these, pair of Nighthawks and this Huntmaster, you can actually just present a defense there.
Yeah, very different. Fiendslayer Paladin from Paladin on Vec. It does not literally have protection from black and red, meaning that you are able to block it and you're able to damage it as long as you don't target it.
Yeah.
What you can't do is target it with a removal spell.
Yeah, okay, there's a Johnny.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
This looks pretty good for the hexproof deck. I mean, they've got the Paladin, and then they have a Johnny and Ethereal Armor to really just, get things going and kind of jump over most blockers.
Yeah, now, the Fiendslayer Paladin already has first strike. We get it up on the screen there. So if somehow, if Kopecky can get its power really, really high, it won't matter, right? It turns those Vampire Nighthawks and such into chump blockers.
Right, exactly. The death touch on the Nighthawk does not matter if Fiendslayer Paladin is able to hit you first.
That's right. All right, here's a 4-mana spell, and it's a Huntmaster of the Fell. So a solid turn 3 play here for Corbel.
And, the Jund deck is still playing relatively fair here, whereas the Ban Hexproof deck's about to load up this Paladin with a couple of auras and just smash in for a bunch of damage.
The Huntmaster is able to semi-relevantly threaten the Ajani Collar of the Pride if that was Kopecky's angle right here. He also has the option of the Unflinching Courage to just kind of deal as much damage as quickly as possible. On the other end, that doesn't allow the Planeswalker to start accumulating advantage, but he can sandbag that Ajani for one big double strike turn.
Yeah, I think he's going to want to just cloak up his guy with Ethereal Armor and Unflinching Courage and just, smash in for 6 damage.
Yeah, because I've seen that Ajani used as a sorcery quite a few times in that way that you mentioned, Zach.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's a huge amount of damage out of nowhere. That was Craig Wesco was talking about that card when he was playing in the World Championship, saying you just got a ton of free wins because it's like a card that people don't really do math around.
Okay, here it is. Unflinching Courage on the Fiendslayer Paladin. Now remember, Fiendslayer Paladin doesn't die to Doomblade, it doesn't die to Shock, it doesn't die to Pillar of Flame, and there's the Ethereal Armor as well. So now all of a sudden, it's got 6 power. It still just has lifelink.
Right.
That doesn't interact the way that Armadillo Cloak used to, so
No.
it still just has 1 instance of lifelink. But
I think that was the main reason that we didn't see Armadillo Cloak reprinted, the other being the sheer ridiculousness of it.
Hey, don't laugh. It works.
Exactly.
all right, here's an attack. So now Kopecky's put himself in a position to race very effectively if Corbel can't find a way to get rid of this Fiendslayer Paladin. We know how tough that can be, especially if Kopecky gets to untap. He can play a Johnny Collar of the Pride and use its -3 ability if he wants, and he can crash in there really, really hard. Also, if Kopecky can, add a creature to his side of the board just in any way, that could prevent any Liliana of the Veil shenanigans.
Yeah, and Corbel does have 3 Liliana the Veils in his deck somewhere, but unfortunately he's drawing a bunch of Vampire Nighthawks. Same casting cost, not quite the same effect here.
Yeah, and totally different effect on the board, and hasn't had a good window to cast those because he accelerated from 2 to 4 with Farseek and into 5 for Thragtusk. So he's able to keep his life total up reasonably high while clocking Kopecky somewhat. But
I'm getting nervous for Kopecky. He's got 2 lands and a Johnny in his hand, and if a Liliana comes down for Corbel, you got to figure this game is going to be pretty much in the bag for him. If he doesn't, then he can keep this race up. But man, having that Fiendslayer Paladin with 2 other cards on it, that's a lot of risk.
Yeah, I mean, that's just this deck in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You've got a basket, you've got a lot of eggs, they go together.
Yes.
would you like something in which to carry these eggs?
Yeah. And
now, Fiendslayer Paladin is a pretty nice basket, though.
yeah, the fact that it naturally has lifelink, I mean, obviously the Unflinching Courage would have given it lifelink had it not, but just the fact that it has natural lifelink just means that plus a Rancor isn't really that committing, and it still does a really big race.
No, I will say, I mean, Corbel might just be able to win this the fair way. I mean, if the Huntmaster flips and it's not clear that Kopecky wants to commit his Ajani to the board, he's got a 4/4 Huntmaster, a 2/2 Wolf, 5 points of power from Thragtusk, and 4 more points of power from the Nighthawks. Meanwhile, every single one of those cards has also gained him a little bit of life. So it's not totally inconceivable that Corbel could just, race with his own cards here.
And it looks like Huntmaster is going to flip. If Kopecky's attacking, he's just not intending to play a Johnny this turn.
What do you think about that play, Luis?
I think it's okay. You're really just taking an additional 4 damage by not playing a Johnny, and if you draw another enchantment, or Corbel goes down to 2 low of life, again, not putting enough thought into the Johnny factor, you could just steal a win here, though it is going to be tough to race.
I mean, he's at 13, so a Johnny double strike is 12, which is very much not 13. The other thing that could happen is that Huntmaster could flip, and if Corbel's able to play 2 Nighthawks, that's an additional 2 life for Corbel and an additional Wolf as well.
Plus the 6 points of flying toughness, which also stop the Paladin from just delivering a death blow.
Right.
Though, Kopecky really is looking to draw like a Rancor would be a really good draw here, just to give an additional 3 points with the Ethereal Armor and just make it that much harder to race.
Yeah, it is kind of unreal how good any enchantment would be right now.
Yeah.
A Bonfire would also be amazing now that the Huntmaster has done 2 to the Paladin.
Oh, he rips it
man.
with enthusiasm, as I'm sure he was thinking the same thing there, Luis. But it's actually just his 3rd Vampire Nighthawk of the game, potentially. Looks like his turn is pretty well set up here for Farseek into Nighthawk.
Which does also flip Huntmaster.
Right. I mean, Kopecky at 25, but he's about to take a hit for 11 right now. Again, he is really kind of under the gun to keep gaining as much life as he can. I mean, 6 life a turn is a lot, but you're still not at a favorable rate at that point.
I think if he doesn't draw a spell, he's going to have to play the Johnny, because that way the Huntmaster doesn't flip, and you just gain your boost of 12 life to let you survive for a few more turns.
Yeah, this is going to be an intense couple of turns here. We see the teams are tied at 1-1. The players are tied at 1-1, so this is the one that counts. The winner of this is going to advance to the finals. We have Czech Republic on the right-hand side with Leos Kopecky. He calls himself the Czech Shrek, and you can see why. And he's playing against Adrian Corbel on the left of Hungary. And right now, you can see there's his teammates are crowded around him on both players, and there's no room for any mistake here.
But and that's why you see that everyone conferring with each other. I mean, this really is a team effort. One missed decision right here could spell the entire match.
As Nog puts up his hands.
Look, and that's something that these teams have to deal with, is that sometimes there's too many opinions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, too many cooks is definitely a problem you can run into.
Absolutely.
So I think as the turns go on, the Banned Hexproof deck is actually drawing to more outs than the Jund deck. The Jund deck really doesn't have that many relevant cards besides the Lilianas and the Bonfire and Barter and Blood. But the Jund deck is slightly ahead here. So the Banned Hexproof deck has more cards to draw, but it has less time in which to draw it.
Wow, after all that talking, they finally decided to attack with everything and then said, wait a minute. So this is one of the downsides, of course, the team play, is that it can take a little while to come to a decision. But, this is an important match for Hungary, and they need to make sure that they do it exactly how they intend. So there's 11 damage.
I was going to say, yeah, the way they intend is to shred Kopecki's life total almost in half.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the
A
fact
noble
that they
intent.
have no good blocks from the Paladin, and also have the expectation of something else getting put onto the Paladin this next turn, mean that, yeah, they're really better off just attacking with everything.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, the thing if you try to hold back and play defense, if your opponent draws a way to get through, not only has your blocking gone to naught, but I mean, you've missed out on just a giant chunk of damage.
Now, are there win cards here? Like, if he draws Ethereal Armor, does he just win?
If he draws Ethereal Armor, he's going to do, looks like an 18 minus the 3 from Nighthawk and the 2 from the gaining off the Huntmaster. So it looks like an Ethereal Armor would actually do the trick, or a Rancor.
So that's 3 from each Ethereal Armor, 2 more from Unflinching Courage, 2 more from the Paladin, and then double strike and flying
So
for
it's even,
Johnny.
yeah, that's a pretty incredible amount of damage.
Yeah, and it's the trample here from the Unflinching Courage that's super critical, as it means the Vampire Nighthawk doesn't get to just chump block.
Okay.
So it looks
All
like
right.
that would actually even be like 20 damage.
All right, so let's see if he can do it. Here comes the Huntmaster. It's going to transform back. It's going to put Corval back up to 15 and net him a wolf token. Let's see if Kopecki.
This is a tense draw
This
step.
is a huge draw step for the Czech Republic.
You see the Ajani there. He's got
Go.
that. He's got 1 more mana, so he can cast anything he draws. What was it?
What did he draw?
Looks like a breeding pool to me.
That is a breeding pool, so he bricks, he hits another land. Now the question becomes, does he have to use up a Johnny double strike to not die to the crackback here?
Yeah, I think almost for sure he's got to just hit for the 12 here, which is really unfortunate because you want to save that till you've drawn another enchantment. But if he doesn't hit for 12 here, Huntmaster flips back, and you're just taking an incredible amount of damage.
Yeah, so you'd go up to 20, but that's 2 from Nighthawk, 4 total from Wolves, 4 more from the Huntmaster, 5 from Thragtusk. That's
Yeah, next.
15 and 2 more damage. So I don't think he'd quite be dead, but he would be opening himself up to a lot. And at 3 life, you sort of obligate yourself to gain even more than that.
Yeah, so he might not be 100% dead if he does not play the Ajani here. It's just they have to figure out exactly what they lose to out of the Jund deck at this point.
Right, and this is one of those times where you really should sit down and just go through everything that your opponent could draw and everything you could draw, because you make the wrong decision right here, that is the entire match.
Right, and you've let down your team, your country. You know, there's a lot on the
No
line
pressure.
here. Yeah, no pressure, right?
And another wrinkle here is that by not playing Ajani, once the Huntmaster flips, if Corval then plays 2 spells, he's getting another 2 life off the
Yeah,
Huntmaster.
exactly. And then 2 more life on the Nighthawk, potentially, if it attacks. More Nighthawks in his hand for the later turns. I mean, this is a match where every single point of life is going to matter.
So actually, as we look at it, it looks like Kopecki might gain enough, so as you said, to survive. I think he's actually better off maybe just going for it, not playing the Ajani, and just hoping to draw an enchantment next turn. It means he basically can't win unless he doesn't draw a pump spell next turn. But I think that might actually be his best shot of victory, now that it looks like it's not quite lethal.
And
Now, if that were the case, is he still attacking here, or is there an option for him to leave back his Paladin on blocks?
It seems pretty tough to leave back Paladin here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to just keep dealing damage to Corval, because, I mean, it's not as though the Jund deck is low on life gain.
Right.
And you really need to make sure that you have the clock that you want.
Yeah, this is a tough board state to figure out. I mean, we have a Huntmaster that's being transformed again here. There's also the Vampire Nighthawk, which is going to change the life total significantly, and he's got a bunch of life gain as well. It looks like Luis, he did in fact go for it. There is an Olivia Voldaren.
Yeah, again, the Jund deck is not drawing to a ton of relevant cards. I mean, Olivia is a good card. It puts it up, 4 points of flying defense by just playing it and using it once if you want.
Now,
But it looks like he's probably rather just play the 2 Nighthawks.
Now this is 15 damage here,
15.
and it's going to drop Kopecki down to 3. It's going to put Corval back up to 11.
and I think, actually, if Corval had drawn Bonfire there, it would have been the flawless victory. Because he could have,
No life total, no creatures in play.
Yeah.
and we've seen that before, but that is not to be.
Okay, 2 Vampire Nighthawks. That does represent 6 toughness.
And
worth
the
of
2 life from the
flying
Huntmaster.
blocking, and 2 more from the transformation on that Huntmaster
And then 2
as
more
well.
toughness from the extra wolf on top of that, too.
Well,
Now,
if he had
hopefully it's going to be in the air from
Oh,
a
yeah,
Johnny.
sorry.
But yeah.
So it looks like we're once again in the same spot. The Bant deck just has to draw a way to pump the Paladin's power by at least what looks like 3 here.
Now, thanks to the flooding,
Or
he
4,
does have
or
enough
3,
mana,
yeah.
even if it's another Unflinching Courage, to cast that as well.
Or an Increasing Savagery if he still has those in.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right, here
All
it
right,
is,
this
the
is
big
the-
draw step.
Geist of Saint Traft.
Geist a little late here.
Yeah.
Now, if he plays a Johnny and jumps, is he going to have enough life to survive on the crackback? Just glancing at the board state, it feels like probably not.
It seems unlikely, but he's got to just do it. I mean, he doesn't really have a choice at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps Corbel will block with something. I mean,
Well, he does get to chump the Thragtusk with the Geist
with the
of
Geist of Saint Traft, exactly. And some of the Hexproof decks play
Okay.
Simic Charm or Celestia Charm, so he can represent at least some kind of trick, which might bait Corbel into blocking.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, Simic Charm would be the 3 points you'd need to not be lethal if he blocks with the 2 Nighthawks. So the extra 6 there, basically off the double strike. So there's a really big consideration to double blocking here, which is actually exactly what the Czech team wants.
That would represent essentially another turn for them.
Right.
Yeah, if they don't block, they go to 1. So they could play around Simic Charm or Celestia Charm by double blocking with Nighthawks. Blocking with 1 Nighthawk I don't think plays around anything, though.
Yeah.
There's no instant speed +1 power as far as I know.
Just aggressive urge for the win.
Yeah. And this is tough. I mean, they're the Hungarian team really has to decide, what exactly are the cards they want to lose to? Do they have lethal if they block with 2 Nighthawks? That's got to be what they're figuring out right now.
Yeah, so they're doing the math right now, getting it sorted out, and this is a huge question because even one more draw step for the Czech team could be lethal.
And one thing that the Hungarians, might be tricked by is the Czech team had great discipline, didn't play a Johnny for multiple turns, letting Huntmasters flip. They might have put him on no cards in hand and assume he drew a Johnny this turn. I mean, they may not.
Yeah.
The Czech team did, confer a little bit and think.
Yes.
But if they put him on not having anything else, they're going to include the Thragtusk in damage dealt.
Yeah, that's exactly right now. Because that's a great point, Luis. Not only are they figuring out how to play around how not to die this turn, they're going to try to kill Kopecky on the attack back. Meaning they also have to take into account anything Kopecky could do to stay alive, and that includes right now absorbing 5 whole points of damage with that Geist of Saint Traft.
This is a really intense spot. Also, another thing that could pop up here that I wasn't considering, what about another Ajani? Because this one can't currently do the minus ability again.
Oh, right. Yeah, this particular copy,
This
but under
one.
the M14 rules,
Right.
You can just kind of sub out one for the other.
Yeah, you could be like plus a Johnny, put a counter on this, play another Ajani, jump it.
Yeah,
Totally.
Johnny does fit into the class of things that are lethal.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have mere weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
It actually looks like they're only playing the one of Johnny, so
okay.
that is unlikely. But we have different problems if a second of Johnny comes off the top.
All right, here's Geist of Saint Traft. So they did not block.
Yeah, they decided.
They took it.
They also get to look at deck lists, and it looks like there are no cards that would actually deal lethal there. So
Okay, so they were able to eliminate that as a possibility. It's a Farseek and not a Bonfire, which is what that big reveal was there from Corbel. All right, so lining up a bunch of attacks. There's some math being done.
looks like they're 1 point short.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, right, because Huntmaster didn't flip because
No,
the Geist was...
because the Geist.
But now they
So
get to just pass the turn and flip the Huntmaster.
Oh,
Right. 246, 246, and then 2 more.
That's 14, 14 off the attackers, dropping both teams to 1 for a second, Corbel up to 5, upkeep, flip, Huntmaster.
that's
Upkeep.
unreal.
And that's it. Hungary
Wow.
defeats the Czech Republic here in the semis and secures their spot.
So 1 life on
In the
both
finals.
sides.
1 life.
Exactly short on 2 consecutive attacks, and a Huntmaster flip secures this game.
Jeez, so close.
That game was both awesome and heartbreaking at the same time.
It really was. I can't remember the last time I saw a game that close, and there was so much math that needed to be done because of the life gain swings. Welcome back to the booth, guys. Marshall Cycliffe here with Zach Hill and Luis Scott Vargas. Wow, that was some intense stuff. So what do you think, Zach? Do you think that it's a bigger advantage that there's all of the players huddled around when you have to do these crazy math that needed to be done for a match like that?
Oh, I absolutely think that it is. I mean, the problem with board states like that is that like sometimes you just count wrong.
Right.
And I did that at Grand Prix Atlantic City, one of the last tournaments I played. I just attacked my opponent very confidently for 14. But not 15. The untapped just killed me. So, I mean, having everybody around is crucial for things like that when you're planning over multiple combats.
Now, how important is a coach in that setup, Luis?
I mean, depending on the coach, it can be the really big difference between winning and losing. Like, our first inclination is like, oh, yeah, he's got to play Johnny this turn. And then we count, and then we realize he doesn't have to. And even though the Czech team ended up losing still, the coach could have been the difference between winning and losing there.
Okay. Looks like we're ready back at the news desk where Rich and BDM await to give us more updates and information. We'll be back here in a little bit, guys. See you in a minute.
That is the World Magic Cup trophy, and there is no fairy tale ending for the Czech Republic. They are done in BDM just astonishing fashion.
Yeah, I done up in Hulk face. Leo Kopetsky, just fittingly, just one creature surrounded by 18 little guys, it seemed like, and he's fighting them off, and he's fighting them off, and he's punching them through. But in the end, a transformed Huntmaster of the Fells finished it off, and it's Scrap Heap of History 1, Czech Republic nothing.
And a little cross on here. Yeah, one of the things I love so much about Magic, when you look at a board, how can it be that when you look from the overhead, you see on the left, creature,
Three vampire nighthawks, right. A literal pack of wolves.
Yeah, and that's on one side. And then on the other side, you have just this one thing looking like that, and it's like, zhunk, eh. And somehow, in this incredible game of ours, that's a fair fight. That's a drama moment.
Really just like 2 points of life separated that from being a loss and a victory.
Yeah, astonishing. It does, though, mean that we have our first finalist here at the World Magic Cup 2013, and it is Hungary. They've improved on their top 4 finish from last year.
Well done. Thomas Naj, we saw him, it was really interesting actually. We saw him coaching the team, and there was one point where there was a key play coming up and everybody was pointing and everybody was doing stuff, and Naj was just like, stop. You're actually, hurting more than helping here by like pointing and gesturing, and let's just play this game.
Yeah, I would like to give a shout out when you say coach. I'd like to give a shout out to my voice coach. This is Narwhal. Every time we mispronounce something, the man is there to give us the gen.
It's a lot of Twitter posts.
So it turns out that K-O-C-S-I-S, Coxis, apparently not. It's pronounced Kochish. Gabor Kochish. Okay? Because apparently CS is CH. And S equals SH in Hungarian. So there's a lot more sh and sh than I was expecting. So there we are. Thanks to Narwhal and Gabor Koch. I can't even do it. Kochish. Well, we get to have another go in the final, and he'll be pleased, I'm sure. Not as pleased as he is to be into the final. So that's one semi-final done. The players are going to set up for semi-final 2. That, of course, is France against Iceland. Got some great stories to pick BDM's brains about in a little bit. But, in case you missed it, this is day 5 of Worlds Week, and that means not 1, but 2 gigantic trophies being awarded this week. And we had a little chat with our good friends at Gathering Magic and that guy, James, king of the infographics.
That guy?
Yeah, that guy, James. And it turns out he put some things together for the World Championship themselves. So let's take a little look at those while the players get ready. So we begin the stakes. What was at stake for this one? We have a prize fund of $108,000 US. And as you can see, 40, 60, 70, 80,000 of that still to be awarded. And that goes between our 4 semi-finalists, Reed Duke, Shahar Shenhar, Ben Stark, and Josh Utter-Leighton. And you know what? Even if you turned up, Martin User down there in 16th place, $1,000 for your troubles. Thanks for coming and being part of a great event.
$40,000 though, obviously the lion's share of that. And, not to be lost in here, Planeswalker points, 12 times multiplier.
Yeah, and a pro point for every match win, and 2 for today. So the winner today will get 4 more pro points to add to their collection. So Reed Duke could end up, for example, with 14 pro points from this event.
And in the lead for the player of the year.
Indeed so. All right, let's move on. And so what did this field of 16 come in? Well, we had your last 3 Pro Tour champions. Out of those 3, obviously we were both at all those events. Which of those 3 champions impressed you the most in the manner of their victory?
Tom Martell. I've known Tom for a long time, and there was a time where Tom thought he was as good at Magic as he is now.
Right.
But he wasn't then.
Okay, yes, I understand.
It's been really interesting to watch him grow better at Magic and more humble about it at the same time.
Well, there comes a point, doesn't there, where however good you are, you suddenly understand how much you don't know.
Well, when he has a 3-year median that's comparable to the likes of Luis Scott Vargas's career peak, it's easy to sort of let other people do your talking for you.
Yeah. I don't need to tell you how good I am. Here are my results. I agree with that entirely. We have more champions, of course. You had Dmitry Budakov, Josh Atterlayton, the 2012-2013 Player of the Year, and the returning champion from the Players' Championship, as it was then, Yuya Watanabe. Now, as it happened, of course, Josh Atterlayton is still live, Yuya Watanabe not so. But I want to talk briefly, BDM, about the contribution to the week in general of Dmitry Budakov, because he ended up 6-6, and I thought that was a tremendous performance from someone who, comes from Siberia. He doesn't have a playtest group other than his mouse.
Right. Very easy to look at this group of players and pencil Dmitry Budakov into the last slot.
It's
right?
the obvious thing.
It's the obvious thing. It happened to Reed Duke for cry eye. You know what I mean? Like, this is, he finished in last place last year. There's this assumption that someone's going to come from the world of Magic Online and not be able to hold their own against players who are used to shuffling decks and all the visual cues and the tells and the timing of the game. But Dmitry Budakov, 6-6. Far from last place.
Yeah, I thought Budakov did a really good job this past week. Now, Asia Pacific region was Li Shi-chan, Latin America was Willie Adel. The reason you don't see other regions on there, well, they're already winning championships elsewhere. So your Europe rep, if you like, Stanislav Sivka. You've got, of course, your North America representative, Josh Atterlayton.
Yuya Watanabe would have represented the Japanese region.
That's right. So that's why you're missing those 3 regions. What that meant is we then went to our kind of full list of the Player of the Year race from last year, and that gave you an astonishing bunch. Let's take a look at the ages of the players, and we go all the way 15 years gap. When Willie Adel was starting Magic, Shahar Shenhar was 4 or 5. Goodness me. And Shahar actually has a pretty significant gap in age before we get to any of the others. You see lots of them clustered in there.
Yeah, Reed Duke, 23, is the next youngest player.
You forget how young Martin User is, though. He's only 26 in his mid-20s. You and I were just talking off air. France about to be in the semi-final here of the World Magic Cup. Raphael Levy, clearly one of the oldest players alive.
I thought you were going to say clearly he has to be lying about his age.
I would never say such a thing.
Well, I
But
would.
How old is he?
He's 31.
You see, that seems implausible.
But he did. When he went to his first Pro Tour, he was 15 years old.
He was a real kid, wasn't he?
Yeah, he absolutely was.
Absolutely. Now, Ben Stark, I can tell you that this graphic is now out of date because Ben Stark, I believe, has now turned 30. You've got Budakov.
I believe it's doubly out of date because I believe David Ochoa's birthday is today.
Oh. And will he be celebrating by going off to Burger King or somewhere similar?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's a bit of a foodie, David Ochoa. He likes
A fast foodie.
Yeah, fast foodie, like me and Mark Rosewater. Willie Adel up the top there. Let's move on. They're the ages, and here you see the breakout. Plenty of flags there. Of course, the majority from the United States, because fair play to them. The US have really sorted their lives out at Magic.
And 3 of those players still alive.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got Reed Duke in there, you've got Josh Utter-Leighton in there, and Ben Stark. And then a couple from the Czech Republic. Sifka did better, and you've just seen him eliminated from team play. The two Japanese players, I think they'll be a little disappointed with how they fared.
Sure.
Willie Adel couldn't get to the top four. Li Shichan did fine. He wasn't expecting to win at all, and he didn't. And then Israel Shahar Shenhar right in the mix still to be world
with
champion.
his family watching on the whole way.
That's wonderful. And of course, the Russian Federation for Dmitry. Let's move on again. And here you see their lifetime pro points. And, you know, I'm quite impressed they managed to get a graphic that would work for the 530 lifetime pro points of Shuhei Nakamura.
We talked about the disparity between the oldest and youngest in this tournament.
Yeah.
A 530 pro point gap between Dmitry Budakov and Shuhei Nakamura.
Yeah. You see Craig Wesco heading towards 200. Yuya Watanabe up over 300. We don't speculate too often on
Ben
Hall of
Stark
Fame.
also going over 300
indeed.
As he heads into the Hall of Fame this October.
Talking of the Hall of Fame, I imagine there is a world in which Yuya Watanabe doesn't get into the Hall of Fame once he becomes eligible, but I don't think it's this one.
You keep track of the days of that world on the Mayan calendar because the world has already ended in that war. You know, he's got my vote. I'm just going to go on the record.
Yeah, he is truly an extraordinary player. So congratulations, of course, to our Hall of Fame inductees coming this way in Proto Feros. The big three. Tell everyone who's in this year, BDM.
Luis Scott Vargas joining us in the commentary booth this weekend.
Yep.
William Huey Jensen, well-deserved and a long time coming. And, of course, Ben Stark, who did some great work at the desk this weekend.
Indeed.
Breaking down Team Sealed for people.
Yeah, we had a ton of fun with Ben for sure. Let's take a look at their lifetime earnings this 16. And you've got Li Shichan and Dmitry Budakov down there at the bottom with $25,000 US, heading towards 100 for the likes of Adel and Frolik and Martel. A lot of that recently. And then once you get over 100K, well, you're looking at some pretty serious names there. Josh Utter-Leighton, 120, 160 for Stark and Watanabe, 170 user, and then way up the top, Shuhei Nakamura at 321. But I can tell you that the second semi-final is upon us. At BDM, this is France against Iceland, Guthmann Haraldsson, Levy against Gislason, Simoneau against Sigurdsson. One word, who do you like, France or Iceland?
France has already beaten Iceland in this tournament.
One word, that's all I wanted.
I like France.
Fair enough.
3 words.
Yep, well, I went on Nico, the Japanese stream, hundreds of thousands of people watching there in Japanese, and they said, just tell us in English who you like. And I said, I think France looked really strong today, so I'm with you on that one. But as always, you just saw that last match. The cards fall where they may. It's time for the second semi-final of the World Magic Cup 2013 in the booth. Zach Hill, Luis Scott Vargas, and once again, it's Marshall Sutcliffe.